Picture a Tuesday afternoon in Lafayette, Louisiana, where the air hums with the quiet rhythm of a small city winding down. At a Chevron gas station on Myrtle Street, a man named Clifton Baines stands by his silver SUV, the pump clicking to a stop at $63. He's not in a rush. The day, been long, filled with the weight of mediating a heated property dispute between two families. Clifton, a skilled mediator, has spent hours in a windowless room, coaxing solutions from stubborn arguments. Now all he wants is a bottle of water, maybe a black coffee, and the comfort of home with his wife. He's dressed simply: jeans, a gray hoodie, sneakers, his suit from earlier swapped for something comfortable. His plug-in hybrid SUV, sleek with tinted windows, draws a few glances, but Clifton barely notices. He's used to it. What he doesn't expect is what happens next. Two Lafayette Police Department cruisers pull into the lot, parking at sharp angles, one near the exit, one behind his vehicle. Two officers step out, moving quickly. The older one, with a squared jaw and close-cropped hair, seems in command, while the younger one, lanky and nervous, follows close behind. Their approach is tense, purposeful, their hands hovering near their belts. Clifton, calm but alert, notices movement in his side mirror and turns slowly. He raises his hands, one still clutching his key fob, and asks if everything's all right. The older officer, named Mullery, demands he step away from the vehicle, citing a vague report of a stolen car from Moss Street, a broad street, a common car. The younger officer, Fennick, asks for a gas receipt, which Clifton says is in the cup holder. But before he can move, Mullery snaps at him to stay still, his voice sharp, cutting through the humid air. Across the lot, a high school kid in a Letterman jacket pulls out his phone and starts recording. Clifton notices but stays composed, his voice steady, his hands visible. He mentions his ID and registration are in the glove compartment, but Mullery warns that reaching for them would be resisting. Without explanation, Mullery grabs Clifton's wrist, twists it behind his back, and snaps on cold metal handcuffs. Clifton flinches but doesn't fight. The younger officer hesitates, looking uneasy, as if sensing something's wrong. A small crowd forms, drivers slow down, a woman steps out of the gas station, phone in hand, already dialing. The station manager emerges, calling out that Clifton's a regular, not a thief. More phones come out, capturing the scene, but Mullery presses Clifton against the hood of his SUV, asking about weapons or drugs. Clifton, calm as ever, says he's just a mediator heading home after a long day. The younger officer checks Clifton's ID and registration, his voice dropping as he reads the name, Judge Clifton Baines. The truth dawns, but Mullery brushes it off, insisting they'll sort it out downtown. Clifton is led to the cruiser, the door slamming shut with a heavy thud. Inside, the car smells of stale fries and sweat. Clifton sits quietly, wrists aching from the cuffs, each bump in the road scraping metal against bone. He doesn't speak, not yet. Mullery rides shotgun, scoffing at Clifton's claim of being a judge, suggesting he's faking it, maybe using a stolen ID. Fennick, driving, glances in the rearview mirror, his jaw tight. He tries to make small talk, asking if Clifton works downtown, but Clifton's response is measured. He's with a law firm, something like that. Fennick mentions protocol, but Clifton calls it what it is, a presumption, not procedure. The cruiser pulls into a side lot behind the precinct. A few officers smoking near a dumpster pause, their voices trailing off as Clifton is led out. Inside, fluorescent lights buzz over desks piled with paperwork. Recognition spreads among the officers. Detective Elena Navarro, mid-conversation, freezes when she sees Clifton. Her voice cuts through the room, demanding to know why a sitting circuit court judge is in handcuffs. Mullery defends the stop, citing a suspect vehicle, but Navarro's disbelief is palpable. She orders the cuffs removed and calls for a supervisor. Clifton stands tall, adjusting his hoodie, his silence louder than any protest. The room grows still, eyes avoiding his. Navarro offers coffee and apology, but Clifton's mind is elsewhere, on accountability, not revenge. In a small interview room, Clifton sits under a flickering fluorescent bulb, a plastic cup of water in front of him. Internal Affairs Lieutenant Devra Linley steps in, her sharp eyes studying him. She acknowledges the gravity of the situation, nodding the video is already spreading, drawing calls from the public. Clifton doesn't rant. He speaks clearly, detailing how he was followed without cause, detained without justification, and cuffed in public, all because he was in the wrong car wearing the wrong clothes. Linley listens, jotting notes confirming Mullery's history of misconduct reviews and Fenwick's passivity. Clifton doesn't want an apology. He wants the truth on record for himself and for everyone who faces this without a title. Linley promises a hearing, and Clifton, free to go, steps into the hallway. Navarro waits near the exit, warning that his wife, Geneva, is upset and waiting outside. Clifton knows the hearing will be messy, political, loud, but he's ready. He's been ready, even if he didn't know it was his turn. By evening, the video has exploded online. 120,000 views and climbing, shared across social media with captions decrying the injustice. Geneva stands in their kitchen, arms crossed, her jaw tight but her voice steady as she asks if Clifton's okay. He nods, physically fine but carrying the day's weight. She hands him his court robe, a reminder of tomorrow's hearing. They share a quiet moment over gumbo, the TV muted as news cycles churn. Their daughter, Marin, home from LSU, steps into the kitchen, eyes puffy from crying after seeing the video. She hugs her father, whispering that she thought it was fake at first. Clifton reassures her he's okay, but she insists he's not yet. Later, Geneva reads a comment aloud from the endless scroll of opinions. Suspicion justifies treatment, title or not. Clifton shakes his head, pointing out the danger of that logic. Dignity shouldn't need to be proven. As the family sits together, Clifton knows tomorrow's hearing won't be just another case. It's a chance to break the silence he's seen too many endure. The next morning, the Lafayette Municipal Courthouse buzzes with a different kind of energy. Reporters line the steps, locals and activists fill the halls, drawn by the viral video. Clifton arrives early, his dark suit crisp, his robe folded over his arm. Geneva parks 2 blocks away to avoid the cameras, while Marin stays home texting her support. Inside his chambers, Clifton sits at his desk, the weight of the day settling in. Lieutenant Linley delivers a manila envelope with the internal review. 6 witness statements, including the gas station attendant and the teen who filmed it, Taron McBride. Both officers have lawyered up, Mullery with a union attorney, Fenwick with private counsel. The ethics board has called for an urgent hearing in Clifton's courtroom, citing public interest as the video goes national. Clifton knows the Justice Department is watching. He steps into courtroom 2C at 9:00 a.m., the room packed, every seat taken, whispers falling silent as he takes the bench. Clifton opens the hearing with clarity, emphasizing that this isn't about him but about conduct, evidence, and standards. The bailiff presents body cam footage, photos, and witness statements. Mullery sits stiffly, his lawyer whispering, while Fenwick looks pale, hands clenched. The courtroom doors open and Taron McBride enters with his mother, taking a reserved seat. Clifton acknowledges him, knowing his testimony will carry weight. Mullery's attorney argues procedure and split-second decisions. But Clifton cuts through the rhetoric, asking Mullery directly if he believed the arrest was lawful. Mullery cites a vague bolo, black male, mid-40s, gray hoodie, silver SUV, but admits there were no specific markers like behavior or weapons. Clifton presses Fenwick, who admits he didn't verify the information or question Mullery's actions, citing his partner's seniority. The room tenses as Tehran takes the stand, ready to share what he saw, a story that will echo far beyond the courtroom. The courtroom in Lafayette Municipal Courthouse holds its breath as Tehran McBride, a 17-year-old high school student, takes the witness stand. His hoodie shifts as he settles into the chair, his nervous energy betrayed by the slight bounce in his legs. His mother watches from the front row, her fierce gaze a quiet anchor. Tehran swears the oath, his voice starting soft but growing steady, and when he leans into the microphone, he looks straight at Clifton Baines, recognizing him as the man from the gas station video. The room feels tighter, every eye locked on this young man who, with a single press of a button, turned a fleeting moment into a national conversation. Tehran recounts that Tuesday afternoon with a clarity that cuts through the room's tension. He was walking back to school after lunch, cutting through the Chevron on Myrtle Street, when he noticed Clifton at Pump 3, fueling his silver SUV. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, just a man getting gas. Then two police cruisers screeched into the lot, one blocking the exit, the other pulling up behind Clifton's car. The officers moved fast, hands on their belts, their posture signaling trouble before a word was spoken. Tehran stopped in his tracks, his instincts kicking in. He'd seen scenes like this before, though never with someone like Clifton. He pulled out his phone and hit record, not because he knew who Clifton was, but because he didn't trust what he was seeing. He describes how the officers approached Clifton, their voices sharp, demanding he step away from his vehicle. Clifton stayed calm, hands raised, offering his ID and registration, but the older officer, Mullery, wasn't listening. Instead, he twisted Clifton's arm, snapped on handcuffs, and pressed him against the SUV. Tehran's voice cracks as he recalls the moment, the way Clifton didn't resist, didn't raise his voice, just stood there, steady but tired. The younger officer, Fennec, seemed hesitant, his eyes darting, but he didn't intervene. Tehran kept filming, capturing every second until Clifton was led to the cruiser. When asked why he recorded, Tehran's answer is simple: he wanted proof. And when he later learned Clifton was a judge, he felt a mix of shock and hope. Maybe now people would care. The courtroom hangs on his words, the silence so thick it seems to press against the walls. Clifton thanks Tehran, his tone calm but weighted, and the young man steps down, casting a final glance at the room as if to say this wasn't just about one man, it could have been anyone. The focus shifts back to the defense table where officers Mullery and Fennec sit, their lawyers whispering urgently. Clifton asks if either wants to speak, not as officers hiding behind protocol, but as people. Mullery stays silent, his jaw tight, but Fennec stands, his voice small. He admits he knew the arrest felt wrong but didn't speak up, cowed by Mullery's seniority and his own inexperience. He wants to fix it, to stop pretending it didn't happen. Clifton scribbles a single word in his notes, conscience, before moving on. Then comes an unexpected moment. Detective Elena Navarro, a 17-year veteran with 5 years in internal affairs, takes the stand. Her presence commands attention, her badge glinting as she moves with quiet authority. She recounts seeing Clifton brought into the precinct, recognizing him instantly as Judge Baines. Her shock turned to concern not just for Clifton, but for what his detention revealed about the system she's part of. She questioned Mullery's reasoning, a vague vehicle description tied to a theft, and learned they hadn't even run Clifton's plates before cuffing him. In her view, protocol was ignored, replaced by assumptions and haste. She notes Mullery's history, 4 questionable stops in 6 years, while Fennec's clean record is marred by his silence. Her testimony lands like a stone in still water, rippling through the room. Clifton listens, his fingers tapping the bench twice, a subtle sign of the weight he carries. He addresses the courtroom, his voice steady but laced with a quiet fire. Misconduct, he says, isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it's a pair of handcuffs slapped on without a question, a partner's silence when they know better, a system that lets perception override policy. He was lucky. His title, his name, the camera. The crowd gave him a voice others don't have. But what about those without a robe, without a viral video? Would they be here in this courtroom demanding accountability? The question hangs unanswered as he turns to the officers. Their badges come with responsibility, he says, to see people for who they are, not what a hoodie or a car suggests. The clock ticks toward 10:42 a.m. and Clifton reaches for the decision folder. The room leans in, every breath held. He delivers his findings with precision, no need for theatrics. Sergeant Trent Mullery's actions were reckless, detention without cause, failure to verify identity, unnecessary escalation. Clifton refers him to internal affairs for disciplinary action, recommending immediate suspension and a review of his prior misconduct cases. Mullery's lawyer starts to object, but Clifton silences him with a raised hand, nodding the right to appeal. To Officer Bryce Fennick, Clifton is measured but firm. Fennick's inaction enabled the incident, but his willingness to admit fault shows promise. Clifton recommends retraining, desk duty, and a mentor to guide him. He turns to the courtroom, his voice dropping to a quieter register, the kind that pulls you closer. This isn't about him, he insists. It's about what happens when systems fail, when judgment is clouded by bias, when silence becomes complicity. He looks to the young faces in the crowd, students and teenagers like Tehran, and says he wasn't targeted for being a judge, but for fitting a preconceived image. The difference is they picked the wrong man to dismiss as just another suspect. You shouldn't need a title to be treated like a citizen, he says, or a viral video to be believed, or a robe to be respected. He removes his glasses, setting them gently on the bench, and shares a truth forged from 2 decades in court. Fear doesn't justify laziness, and a badge isn't a shield against accountability. With a single, deliberate strike of the gavel, the hearing closes. The sound isn't loud, but it's final, echoing in the stillness. Clifton exits through the side door and Tehran stands, offering a slight nod, a quiet bond between two people who met in the worst way but won't forget. Outside, the sun climbs higher, reporters swarm, but Clifton keeps moving. Geneva waits by the car, holding the door open, her words simple but heavy. He did what he had to do. Clifton corrects her softly. He did what they needed him to do. They drive off, the weight of the morning settling, but a stop for coffee and a visit to Marin's dorm lie ahead, small anchors in a day that changed everything. Back at the courthouse, the crowd spills onto the steps. Someone chalks 3 words on the sidewalk: respect without rank. They don't need a hashtag or a campaign, just truth. The story isn't over, but it's a start, a call to share, to speak, to refuse silence. If this moves you, tell someone, your kids, your friends, your neighbors. Change begins when we talk, when we demand better, when we see each other clearly. The sun hangs high over Lafayette, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps as Clifton Baines and his wife, Geneva, drive away. The weight of the morning's hearing lingers, a quiet hum in the air, like the city itself is processing what just happened. Inside the courtroom, Clifton's words still echo, calm, deliberate, cutting deeper than any shout could. He spoke of accountability, of systems that falter when perception overrides reason, of the countless others who face what he did without a title to shield them. The gavel's strike was final, but the story is far from over. It's spreading, carried by voices, screens, and the raw truth of a moment caught on camera. By midday, the video of Clifton's arrest has surged past 200,000 views, racing across social media like wildfire. It's no longer just a local story. National outlets pick it up, dissecting the grainy footage of a man in a gray hoodie, hands raised, cuffed for no reason other than a vague description. Comments flood in, a mix of outrage and support, some laced with venom, others with hope. One post stands out, shared thousands of times, a still frame of Clifton, his face calm but tired, with the caption, "They didn't know he was a judge, and that's the point." Geneva sees it on her phone as they stop for coffee, her lips pressing into a thin line. She doesn't say much, but her silence speaks volumes. She's proud, angry, and resolute all at once. At home, their daughter Marin sits in her dorm room at LSU, her phone buzzing with messages from friends who have seen the video. She's 19, studying sociology, and the image of her father in handcuffs has shaken her in ways she can't yet articulate. She texts him, simple words, "You were strong today, Dad." Clifton reads it over his coffee, the warmth of the mug grounding him. He thinks of Marin's puffy eyes from the night before, her hug that felt like she was holding on to more than just him. He knows this isn't just his story, it's hers too, and it's Teron McBride, the teenager whose quick thinking with a phone changed everything. It's the story of every person who's been stopped, questioned, or judged for how they look rather than who they are. Back at the courthouse, the crowd lingers, spilling onto the sidewalk. A few reporters stay scribbling notes while others pack up their cameras, already chasing the next headline. But for the locals, law students, activists, everyday folks who showed up, the moment feels bigger. A young woman, barely out of college, kneels to add to the chalked words on the pavement, "Respect without rank." The phrase catches on, whispered among the group, shared in photos that spread online. It's simple, unpolished, but it carries the weight of truth. No one organized this, it's just people, moved by what they saw, wanting to hold onto the clarity Clifton brought to that courtroom. Inside the precinct, the mood is different. Officer Trent Mullery sits in a small office, his union lawyer by his side, preparing an appeal. His jaw is still tight, his eyes fixed on some distant point, as if he can will the day's events to bend in his favor. Officer Bryce Fennick, meanwhile, is alone, staring at his locker, his tie now crumpled in his hand. He's replaying Clifton's words about inaction, about silence being complicity. Fennick's only been on the force 2 years, and today feels like a turning point, one he didn't choose but can't ignore. Detective Elena Navarro passes him in the hallway, her expression unreadable. She's already filed her report, detailing the breach in protocol, and she knows this case will haunt the department for months, maybe years. Clifton, now at Marin's dorm, sits on a small couch, surrounded by textbooks and posters. Marin pours him a glass of iced tea, her hands steadier now. She asks what's next, and Clifton doesn't have a neat answer. He tells her about the hearing, about Teron's courage, about the questions he asked that no one could dodge. He talks about the system not as an abstract thing, but as a web of choices made by people, some good, some lazy, some scared. Marin listens, her eyes bright with the kind of fire that comes from seeing justice up close, even if it's messy. Geneva, sitting nearby, adds quietly that change doesn't come from one day in court, it comes from what people do next. By evening, the story is everywhere. News anchors debate it on cable shows, mispronouncing Clifton's name, arguing over whether he should have recused himself. Bloggers and law professors chime in, some calling it a wake-up call, others dismissing it as a one-off mistake. But on the ground in Lafayette, it's more than a talking point. A community group organizes a meeting at a local library, inviting Teron and his mother to speak. They show up, Tehran still in his hoodie, his voice stronger now as he talks about why he hit record. His mother, proud but guarded, says she's tired of seeing the same story play out, of hopping a camera will be enough to make people listen. Clifton doesn't attend the meeting. He's home, sitting at the dining table, the manila envelope from Internal Affairs still unopened. He doesn't need to see the footage again, it's seared into his mind. Instead, he pulls out a yellow legal pad and writes, not for the court but for himself. He lists questions, the kind that dig deep. Why do assumptions override evidence? Why does a badge sometimes feel like a free pass? Why does it take a judge in cuffs to make people care? He underlines one line, the same one from the night before. Would this have happened if I looked like you? It's not a question he'll ask in court, but it's the one that keeps him up, long after Geneva turns off the hallway light. The next morning, Lafayette wakes to a city changed, even if just a little. The chalk on the courthouse steps has faded under foot traffic, but the words linger in photos, in conversations, in the quiet resolve of people who saw something they can't unsee. Clifton heads back to work, his robe folded over his arm, ready for another day in court. He knows the appeals will come, the headlines will fade, and the system will push to move on. But he also knows he's not alone. Geneva's strength, Marin's fire, Tehran's courage, and the eyes of a community are with him. This isn't about one man's vindication. It's about demanding a world where dignity doesn't depend on a title or a viral moment. If this story stirs something in you, don't let it sit. Share it with your kids, your friends, your neighbors. Talk about what it means to see people for who they are, not what they're assumed to be. The truth doesn't spread on its own. It needs voices, action, courage. Keep watching, keep speaking, keep demanding better. The story of Clifton Baines isn't just his, it's ours, and it's far from finished. The days following Clifton Baines' hearing in Lafayette unfold like a slow, steady current, pulling the city into a deeper reckoning. The courthouse steps, once crowded with reporters and onlookers, now sit quieter, but the chalked words, respect without rank, linger in the collective memory, shared in screenshots and murmured in conversations across town. The viral video of Clifton's arrest, now nearing 500,000 views, has become a touchstone, not just for Lafayette, but for anyone who's ever felt judged by a glance, a hoodie, or the car they drive. It's a story that refuses to fade, carried forward by those who see themselves in Clifton's calm defiance and Tehran McBride's quick instinct to hit record. Clifton returns to his routine, or at least tries to. Each morning, he slips into his dark suit, adjusts his tie, and drapes his judge's robe over his arm, stepping into the Lafayette Municipal Courthouse with the same steady stride. But something's different now. The clerks nod with a new kind of respect, not just for his title, but for what he stood for in Courtroom. 2C lawyers passing in the halls offer quiet words of support, while others, less cert, avoid his gaze. Outside, the city buzzes with debates at coffee shops, in barber shops, on front porches, about what happened at that Chevron gas station and what it means for everyone else. Clifton feels the weight of those conversations, even if he doesn't join them. He knows this moment isn't just about him, it's about the countless others who face the same assumptions without a gavel to wield. Geneva, his wife, carries her own quiet strength. She's back at her legal advocacy work, fielding calls from colleagues and community leaders who want to know how they can help. Her phone buzzes constantly with messages, some from friends, some from strangers moved by the story. She reads them all but responds to few, saving her energy for the bigger fight she knows is coming. At home, she and Clifton share small moments, a shared glance over dinner, a laugh at Marin's latest college story that ground them amidst the storm. Geneva's pride in Clifton is unspoken but fierce. She sees the toll this has taken, the way he lingers over his legal pad late at night, jotting questions that have no easy answers. Marin, their daughter, channels her emotions into action. Back at LSU, she joins a student group organizing a panel on community policing, inspired by her father's ordeal. She speaks up in class, her voice steady as she connects the dots between sociology texts and the real-world injustice she witnessed. Her friends share the video, adding their own captions, their own stories of being profiled or overlooked. Marin texts her father daily, checking in, but also pushing him to keep going. She knows he's not just fighting for himself, but for her generation, for kids like Tehran who shouldn't have to carry a phone like a shield. Tehran McBride, meanwhile, becomes an unexpected voice in the city. The 17-year-old, once just a kid cutting through a gas station lot, is now a symbol of courage. At the community meeting in the local library, he speaks plainly, his hoodie still a quiet rebellion. He talks about why he filmed, how it felt to see a man treated like a suspect for no reason, and how it could have been his uncle, his father, or himself. His mother sits beside him, her presence a reminder of the stakes for their family. The room listens, rapt, as Tehran says he didn't know Clifton was a judge, he just saw a man who deserved better. The crowd nods, some in tears, others in quiet agreement. Tehran's words spread beyond the library, clipped into short videos that circulate online, amplifying the call for change. At the Lafayette Police Department, the air is tense. Officer Trent Mullery's suspension has sparked heated debates within the force. Some colleagues defend him, citing the pressures of the job, while others whisper that he's had too many chances. His appeal is pending, but the union's support feels less certain now, strained by the public's scrutiny. Officer Bryce Fennick, assigned to desk duty, spends his days under the watchful eye of a mentor officer. He's quieter now, replaying the moment he stayed silent at the gas station. In a private moment, he writes a letter to Clifton, not an apology, but a promise to do better, to speak up next time. He doesn't send it, not yet, but keeps it tucked in his desk, a reminder of the conscience Clifton's words stirred in him. Detective Elena Navarro continues her work in internal affairs, her testimony from the hearing now part of a broader review of departmental practices. She meets with Lieutenant Devra Lindley, poring over body cam policies and training protocols, searching for gaps that let moments like Clifton's arrest happen. Navarro's resolve is personal. She's seen too many complaints brushed aside, too many officers protected by silence. She pushes for mandatory de-escalation training, for stricter guidelines on stops based on vague descriptions. Her colleagues respect her, but some resent her, calling her a traitor behind closed doors. She shrugs it off, she's fought harder battles before. Clifton, back in his chambers, prepares for the next case, but his mind often drifts to the hearing. The manila envelope from Internal Affairs sits unopened on his desk. He doesn't need to see the footage to remember the cold bite of handcuffs, the weight of Mullery's hand on his shoulder, the flicker of doubt in Fennick's eyes. He thinks of his father, George, a bus driver who never missed a day, who taught him that right and wrong don't need a badge to be clear. Clifton writes more questions on his legal pad, each one a challenge to the system he's part of. How do we train officers to see people, not stereotypes? How do we ensure accountability doesn't stop at a suspension? How do we make respect the default, not the exception? The city keeps moving, but it's not the same. A local high school invites Tehran to speak at an assembly, and he agrees, nervous but determined. A group of law students starts a petition for community oversight of the police department, gathering signatures outside the courthouse. A small business owner, inspired by the chalked words, paints respect without rank on her shop's window, drawing curious glances from passers-by. The phrase becomes a quiet mantra etched into Lafayette's consciousness, a reminder that change starts with seeing each other clearly. Clifton and Geneva take a rare evening walk, the air cool and heavy with the scent of magnolias. They don't talk about the hearing, but it's there, woven into their silence. Geneva squeezes his hand, a gesture that says she's with him no matter how long the road ahead. Clifton thinks of the courtroom, of Tehran's courage, of Marin's fire, of the strangers who showed up because they believed in something bigger. He knows the appeals, the debates, the pushback will come, but he also knows he's not carrying this alone. This story, Clifton's, Tehran's, Lafayette's, isn't just a headline. It's a call to action, a demand to look closer, to question what's easy, to fight for what's right. If it moves you, don't let it rest. Share it with your family, your friends, your community. Talk about what it means to demand respect, not as a privilege, but as a right. Keep watching, keep speaking, keep pushing for a world where no one needs a title to be seen. The story isn't over, it's yours to carry forward. Weeks have passed since Clifton Baines stood in Courtroom 2C, his voice steady, his gavel striking a chord that still reverberates through Lafayette. The city has settled into a new rhythm, one shaped by the quiet power of a gas station video and the truth it exposed. The story of Clifton's arrest, once a fleeting moment caught on a teenager's phone, has grown into something larger. A movement, a conversation, a challenge to see people for who they are, not what assumptions paint them to be. The chalked words on the courthouse steps, respect without rank, have faded under rain and footsteps, but their meaning has taken root, sprouting in unexpected places. Clifton moves through his days with the same measured calm, presiding over cases with the fairness he's always brought to the bench. But now his presence carries a different weight. Lawyers linger after hearings to shake his hand, their respect no longer just for his robe but for the stand he took. Outside the courthouse, strangers approach him, not often, but enough, sharing stories of their own encounters with suspicion, their own moments of being unseen. Clifton listens, his eyes steady, knowing each story is a thread in the larger tapestry he's helped unravel. He doesn't seek the spotlight, but it finds him in the form of emails from advocacy groups, invitations to speak, and quiet nods from neighbors who now see him as more than a judge. Geneva, his rock, navigates the aftermath with her own fierce grace. Her work in legal advocacy has taken on new urgency as she connects with community leaders to push for reforms, better training for officers, clearer protocols for stops, a civilian oversight board to hold power accountable. She fields calls from reporters, some seeking sound bites, others genuinely curious about what comes next. At home, she and Clifton carve out moments of normalcy, cooking gumbo, laughing over old family photos, planning visits to Marin at LSU. But in the quiet of their evenings, they talk about the bigger picture, how to turn one moment into lasting change, how to ensure no one else has to endure what Clifton did. Marin, now a sophomore with a fire in her eyes, has found her voice in ways she didn't expect. She's become a leader in her student group, organizing discussions on justice and equity, her father's experience a touchstone for her advocacy. She writes an op-ed for the university paper, her words raw and unflinching, calling out the systems that let bias fester unchecked. Her friends share it widely, and soon it's picked up by a local blog, then a national one. Marin texts Clifton a link to the article with a simple note, "For you, Dad." He reads it, his throat tight, proud of the woman she's becoming, one who sees the world's flaws but refuses to look away. Tehran McBride, the teenager whose video sparked it all, is no longer just a high school kid. His speech at the library has made him a local hero, though he'd never call himself that. He's invited to more events, school assemblies, community forums, where he shares his story with a quiet strength that belies his 17 years. His mother watches, her pride tempered by the knowledge that her son shouldn't have to be a symbol. Tehran starts a small video project, interviewing others in Lafayette about their experiences with police, their voices weaving a narrative that's both painful and hopeful. The project gains traction online, with comments pouring in from across the country, thanking him for speaking truth. Tehran keeps filming, his phone still a tool for change. At the Lafayette Police Department, the ripples continue. Officer Trent Mullery's appeal drags on, but his suspension has sent a message. Some officers grumble, loyal to the badge above all, but others quietly reflect, questioning their own assumptions. Officer Bryce Fennick, still on desk duty, attends his retraining sessions with a new focus. He listens, takes notes, and begins to speak up in ways he didn't before. In a quiet moment, he mails the letter he wrote to Clifton, admitting his silence was a failure and vowing to be better. Clifton reads it, sets it aside, and doesn't respond, not out of anger, but because he knows actions, not words, will prove Fennick's resolve. Detective Elena Navarro pushes forward, her reports shaping new policies, though she knows change is slow, fought for inch by inch. Clifton, late at night, sits at his dining table, his legal pad now filled with pages of questions, ideas, and plans. He's been asked to join a statewide task force on policing, a role he's considering not for the title but for the chance to shape systems from within. He thinks of his father, George, whose simple wisdom, right and wrong don't need a badge, guides him still. He thinks of Tehran, of Marin, of the strangers who stood outside the courthouse, holding signs and hope. He writes one final question: how do we build a world where respect is the rule, not the exception? It's not an answer he has yet, but it's a question he'll carry, a compass for the work ahead. Lafayette itself feels alive with possibility. The community group from the library meeting grows, holding regular forums where residents share ideas for reform. A local artist paints a mural near the Chevron station, depicting a hand holding a phone, the words "See me" curving above it. Students at J.D. Gothro High School, where Tehran studies, start a campaign for body cam transparency, their young voices cutting through the noise. The phrase "respect without rank" appears on t-shirts, in hashtags, on church bulletins, a quiet anthem for a city waking up. It's not perfect, tensions linger, skeptics dismiss the story as overblown, but something has shifted, a crack in the foundation of the status quo. Clifton and Geneva take another walk, this time under a sky streaked with pink and gold. They pass the mural, pausing to take it in. Geneva squeezes his hand, her voice soft but sure. "You started something." Clifton shakes his head, ever humble. "We all did." They keep walking, the weight of the past weeks lighter now, shared by a community that's beginning to see itself differently. This isn't the end, it's a beginning, a spark that needs tending to grow. And here's the truth that hits hardest. This story isn't just Clifton, or Tehran's, or Lafayette's, it's yours. Every time you share it, every time you talk about what respect really means, you keep this fire burning. Don't let it fade. Tell your kids, your coworkers, your community what happens when we demand better, when we refuse to let silence win. Subscribe, stay with us, and let's keep telling stories that matter, because the next one might be the one that changes everything.